I'd like to introduce someone from Titan who's going to be talking about unlocking customer stickiness with email. So Gaurang, can you please join us here on the stage?
Hey folks, good afternoon. It's so good to be back up here on stage in front of you all. Hopefully everybody's kind of recovered from last night's festivities and you're all geared up for the final day here today. It's this time around when we heard that the theme for the third day here at CloudFest was going to be retention's the new acquisition. We were super excited to come share all of the data, all of the evidence, and all of sort of the numbers and trends that we've been seeing across the industry with all of the partners. Email's an incredibly, of course, we are an email player, so in some sense, this is the space that we know best. But it's also an incredibly important tool and incredibly important asset for everybody in the web presence industry, in hosting and domains. And I'm looking forward to kind of sharing some of that data, some of the trends that kind of we've been seeing, and what are the biggest drivers as far as retention goes, and how you can kind of leverage email to get there. So just to talk about this, why email, and what kind of role email plays in the web presence universe as far as retention goes. Three big things that we've seen over and over and over again now in the many years of operating in this space. Number one, email is a high-touch product. You buy an SSL certificate, or you buy site lock or something like that. You think about it only when your renewal comes up. But when you set up email, it's a product you log in every single day, every single business day, and it's not just yourself, but it's also every single employee who happens to work for that user's business. So that's kind of number one. Number two, it scales as your customers grow, as they add headcount, as they add employees, as they grow their business. The size of the email is particularly in terms of the number of email accounts, the amount of storage used, all of those things scale over time. And so it's again, an extremely sticky product. And the number three, and the first two are obviously big positives for end customers, but number three is switching costs. Once it's set up, once it's installed, once you've got many gigabytes of data on your email, try doing a migration. It's pretty tricky, and nobody wants to do that unless they're actually having a genuinely bad experience. So with that, email becomes an extremely valuable asset. If you're running a hosting company, if you're a registrar, at all, in terms of giving your customers something that they're using every single day to run such a critical part of their business. So today, I want to take sort of the time that we have, the next 15 minutes or so, to run through sort of the initiatives, the data, the trends that we're seeing around four broad parameters, the four broad areas of impact that you can have as somebody who provides email to end customers, and ultimately how that ties back into retention of your own customers and other products that you attach it to. So let's start by talking about attach. And attach more email is kind of the idea. The way we define it, the way the industry defines it, as we've seen, is getting users to connect an additional service to their base product. So you might be a hosting company, you may be selling domains, and the idea of attaching a second product is, say, if I sell 100 hosting packages, for instance, how many email packages I can attach that to. So when I talk about attach percentage, that's kind of the number that we're referring to in terms of saying, for every 100 hosting packages, you can get 20 email packages or 25 email packages, or something like that. So in terms of attach, what I want to show you guys is some of the data, some of the trends that we are now seeing in terms of what the potential is, how much business you can grow by attaching email, and the reason for that will become pretty obvious in a second. So let me start with sort of the outcome number first. So this is data up on the screen that we got from across our partners with a large cohort of hosting packages. And we measured, well, if a hosting package set up email along with that hosting package within the first 30 days, at the end of 1 year, what was the impact on retention? And so what you'll see is the data is pretty clear. Folks which did set up an email account along with their hosting package in the first 30 days churned at about 38%. and the ones that did not set up email along with that hosting package, at the end of the year, churned at a rate that was 1.8 times higher than that. So it becomes kind of, it's obviously correlation, but correlation, a pretty strong correlation saying that, well, if your customer is purchasing and adding email along with that hosting package, it's really driving that retention quite a bit more. So, if you happen to be able to successfully give your customer email along with that hosting package, along with that domain, you're going to see far better retention, not just on the email product that obviously drives additional revenue, but also on the base product that you were selling to begin with. What I also wanted to show you guys and kind of show what adds up into that, like what drives, what are the biggest things that you can do as a hosting provider to actually genuinely get more users to attach email. Because as you said, the more email you attach, the more customers you keep. So across partners, we saw, what are the different surfaces in the user interface, the different surfaces that retail customers interact with that are driving that change. And the biggest ones that we saw, obviously, this is not in order, but purchase cart obviously is something that a lot of us already do. You offer sometimes either a free or a paid email service in the purchase cart. That drives about 4% of paid attached. So paid attached is basically a paid email service. We found, through some very creative experimentation, that there's actually a pretty significant opportunity once the user checks out and says reaches the order confirmation screen. Can I then go and say, well, you've set up your base product. Why don't you also take a trial of this email product, see whether you like it or not? So that's actually driven quite a bit of paid attach also. There's opportunities that we've seen which have been extremely impactful in terms of saying, well, you're setting up your email. Do you want to still continue with that free mail that you got with your hosting package? Or by the way, here's this superior product that you can get. Free trials have been extremely impactful, and obviously I'm happy to share more details with anybody who'd like, but free trials have been extremely impactful in terms of getting users to attach. And all of this, if you sum it up along with sort of control panels and so on and so forth, across partners, across the industry, we've seen in developed markets particularly, it's possible now to get 25% of customers attaching email. What's the benefit? What's the impact? Well, the impact is exactly what we said here, which is that the more customers set up and attach email, the more of them become ultimately successful and become sticky customers that you keep over multiple years. So that's kind of the first area, which is attach, that we've covered. The second area of impact, and this is kind of where we get into the really interesting product stuff, is activation. If you think about particularly the old world of email and where we've kind of all come from, we've come from this world where, we'll come back to the definition in a second, but we've come from a world where all of these processes, from purchase to MX setup to creating an email account to logging in to sending the first email, was a series of steps that you had to perform manually. You had to go through each one, you had to know how to do it, and so on and so forth. And over the last kind of few years, a lot of us have innovated in this space trying to figure out how do we activate more customers, how do we get them using and sending that first email to begin with. Because again, it ties all back into, well, if you're successful at using and selling email, then it can truly sort of have an exponential impact in terms of keeping those customers long term. And so a lot of the customers, we lose, especially in sort of legacy style products, because, the MX, in fact, some of these numbers are actually best case numbers. Real world, you'll see actually way more than, we're seeing 85% successfully set up MX. In reality, that number often is much, much lower. Similarly, for how many users successfully are able to go find in the control panel where to create a mailbox, again, we see a lot of drop. In fact, one stat that I got from one of the web hosts that we work with was that if they sell 100 email packages, often only 80 of them ever even set up or use it. 20 of them just say it's too hard. I'm not going to bother. It's fine. And then they churn out. IMAP configuration, like the new world today. We shouldn't all necessarily have to know what IMAP server you have to connect to, but sometimes And so just to give you an example, this is one of the major hosting service providers today, and this is a screenshot from what happens when you complete the setup of the first email account. So it's going to say, well, go and get this is, by the way, not the Microsoft mail service, but this is the kind of the basic mail service that you get with it. it says go download this, the Microsoft Outlook app or any third-party app, or you have to go through a bunch of instructions, whether it's on iPhone and Android, there's another set of instructions, desktop setup, there's another set of instructions. It's all kind of complicated. It may not be for a lot of us who are in tech, but it's pretty complicated for somebody's uncle or somebody's nephew, somebody who's not a particularly tech-savvy person. Here's kind of our take on it. This is what we do at Titan. This is, a little bit of a plug, but, for us, it's basically either you should be able to access your email, manage it, or get the mobile app. And this is kind of talking about this entire theme of activation where over time what we've experienced repeatedly is actually that we're at a stage where activation or getting to use something should be extremely simple. It should be a series of straightforward steps. The rest of the technology industry has caught up to that. You download the app, you sign up, you kind of get started. We feel that activation is super important as kind of the second part of that journey in terms of getting customers to be successful and ultimately retaining more. So giving users easy wins, right? How do we get users to activate? If you're a hosting provider, you can probably pull out some of these numbers, right? For example, how do we get them to just send that first email? How do we get them to create a signature? How do we get them to import existing emails? And this is an area of focus if you're in email, if you're focusing on email, if email is kind of an area of priority for you. It's worth figuring out and saying, well, how successful are my customers at doing any of these things? And kind of optimizing for that. And that will ultimately, again, lead back to the stickiness that we all kind of care so much about. That's kind of the second piece. The third one is product value, which is to say, well, I've done all these things. I've jumped through every hoop I had to jump through. I've got my paid business email account. Well, what's the value I'm getting for it? And for a long time, again, in this universe, what we've talked about in forums like CloudFest is things like, well, what's the deliverability rate? Where's the data stored? And those kinds of questions are obviously important and sensible. But a lot of times, the core of the value that's delivered from a product is actually from the bits that users touch and feel. It's from how easy is it to compose my emails or deal with my inbox or get to inbox 0. And those kinds of things we feel like haven't received kind of enough innovation. The other thing with email, which is kind of why it's been under-monetized in at least our experience, is that because it's something that, the only differentiator between a $2 or $5 or $10 product was how much storage space you offered. And so we believe that with the data and the trends that we are seeing, there's this big change that's kind of happening there across the industry. And so there's kind of three variables here in terms of, well, where are the value centers? How do we provide more and more value, keep more customers over a long period of time? So number one is, well, what's the right product for the persona? If you have an enterprise customer, what's the right product for them? If you've got a kind of an SMB or a solopreneur customer, what's the right sort of solution for them? The second one is, well, how do we grow our ARPU? How do we kind of get more value from the value that customers are getting? And then finally, how do we have the confidence, of course, that products that deliver on the promise 100% of the time? Again, all of these variables feed kind of right back into this question of retention. So, this is kind of the space that we operate in as Titan, and so we have kind of a little bit more knowledge about. But in general, it's something that we are seeing, for all of the customers, all solutions kind of out there. What are the things that our customers will get value from? And so when we've crunched our data, when we've spoken to our customers, a lot of them are saying, well, what are you doing with email to begin with? And most of them are saying, well, I'm reaching out to my customers, I'm doing customer support, I'm sending out invoices, I'm trying to schedule meetings, I'm cold emailing people, I'm trying to kind of, those are the kinds of use cases we see, particularly, what hosting customers are doing with email. And so, we said, well, to achieve all of these three things, build the right product for the persona, get the right ARPU, have a highly reliable product, what are the things that are kind of necessary? So, and we ran a test. We said, well, what matters in email? Do the features matter, or does storage matter at the end of the day? Is it actually meaningfully possible to differentiate the product based on the UX and the UI, or is it just that email is something that users just prefer to use on Apple Mail or Outlook or whatever? So I want to show you, for example, a test that we ran and what the results from that test were. just to kind of establish at least our hypothesis on what the industry is doing and where we're trending in that direction. So this is a screenshot from the plans page from one of our partners. I know the text is a little bit small, but hopefully you can kind of see it. And the first test of what we were doing was we were saying, well, you get the exact same product. The first product is at 99 cents. The next plan of the product is at $2.99. And the only difference between the two is that you have more storage. So you guys will see exactly the same features, exactly the same functionality. The only difference is in the first line where it says you get 10 gigs or you get 30 gigs. So you pay $1 for 10 gigs. You pay $3 for 30 gigs. Right? And you guys can see the sales stats, which are right there. 92% of sales were for the smaller plan because, I'm not going to use 30 gigs on day one. And then 80% of sales were kind of on the bigger plan. And then we said, well, what happens if we develop the second plan more, if we differentiate it, we add a bunch more rich functionality related to kind of all the stuff that we talked about, sales outreach, customer support, invoicing. What if we kind of add those features and functionality, put it all in kind of the premium product, and the basic product can still be, basic email that you all kind of know and are aware about. And so we switched from this structure to this new structure, which is what you guys can see now. Exact same price, a little bit bump on the storage, but you guys can see significantly differentiated features and offering. And this is kind of live in production. We've done this across partners like Hostinger, HostGator in Brazil, across different markets. And every single time we've seen customers say, well, actually, no, I am doing all these other things. I am actually sending out sales mails. I am doing email marketing. I do need a rich HTML, a place where I can just put in my HTML and send out, business mails and things like that. And what we're seeing is that now we've jumped from 8% of sales on that to actually 22% of sales on kind of the bigger product. And we're seeing this in the evolution kind of over time in the industry. We're saying that the percentage or the amount of customers that actually care about the features and functionality over just the back-end service has continued to evolve and continue to grow. And this kind of comes back into the themes, the three items that we were talking about. Offering the right product for the persona, higher ARPU, and higher reliability. And again, all of these three things lead into higher attach on the right product, higher retention over a period of time, and ultimately more revenue for all of us, which is kind of what we all want. So, this is kind of the summary, of course, on activation, which is picking the right product, spending the right kind of amount of energy and time on the user experience, and charging the right price for it, which is obviously kind of what we want to do. And finally, the last part, which is we've been talking a lot about retention. We've been talking a lot about unlocking customer stickiness. Well, is there a way that this ties into the branding and the kind of how visible your brand is as a hosting services provider, as a web presence provider? And so on this, we've seen this result over and over and over again. Now that we're building a very, very custom user experience for this right persona, we're trying to get that to be the interface that users kind of interact with, touch, feel. Can we then use that, leverage that surface to build your brand as a hosting service provider? And this is something, again, we've seen over time. We've established this through the data, at least, that we've seen. Every single provider that we work with, put in a product like email, which uses every single mailbox on average accesses 150 hours plus every year. Well, if you put in, if you're a hosting company and you put your brand up there in front of them, it's not just them, but it's also every employee at that company seeing, interacting with that brand, and growing that brand and developing a reputation for that brand in terms of, well, this is the company, this is the hosting service provider that's helping me achieve all of the growth and all the success that I'm seeing in the business. And so when we now finally wrap all of this up together and we say, well, what does this look like in the context of overall long-term revenue? Is it that we're talking about kind of this checklist of items we have to do? Well, what we realize is that actually this is not a straight line or a checklist of items, but it's actually a flywheel that we've now seen and established over a period of time as models. You get more attach, that leads to more customers being available for activation. When you get more customers to activate, then you're actually getting a higher number of people realizing product value that you're delivering. And then when you have a higher number of users interacting with, realizing the product value that you're delivering. Finally, you get to more people seeing your brand. And the more people see your brand, it comes back into customers and more customers that you're adding at the very top, for not just for email, but for all of your hosting products, all of the products that you kind of offer to customers. So I'd love to share the mathematical model, of course, with anybody who's interested, to see, for you to see what the true potential is. But I'd love to see if, see you all invest in email, invest in kind of building a really great experience and using it to unlock even higher retention and success for yourselves. Thank you.
Gaurang, thank you very much for that presentation. That was amazing. How many times have I gone up and down that stairs the last 3 days? It's starting to get me. Anyway, very cool. All right, so you have 4 things there.
Yeah.
I even wrote them down. You can see attach, activate, product value, brand. But here's the thing. What if somebody out there is starting from scratch? I mean, tackling a big flywheel at once is hard. If you want to give them advice on which one to start to get the most bang for the buck, which way they should start?
I'd start from the beginning. I'd start from attach. I'd say, well, you know what? All of the other stuff is cool, but if you're not, if your customers aren't seeing where to start, where to begin, they aren't seeing enough success. So I think that's where I'd begin.
So start with attach, and then move along the flywheel and get them all going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Gaurang, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your presentation. Everybody, please, for Titan and Gaurang.